I love Romanian food. I have very rarely had any bad Romanian food, and it was all just phenomenal. Um, they kind of have like two sides to their food. There's a whole bunch of like street type of food, that you're gonna get out of vendors, and like their traditional food. Um, Start off with the street food because I loved the street food. There's a thing called shawarma. If anybody like serves around Turkey or Hungary and stuff, they're gonna have thing. It's called kebab in other places, but they take a tortilla type thing. They put French fries in it. Oh my gosh! And then they have like a meat shaver. They have a little spit rotating. It's like a vertical spit, and they either do like shaved chicken or shaved beef or like Euro meat, depends on the place. And they put all kinds of sauces and veggies, and oh my gosh, phenomenal, fantastic. And they're like pretty cheap. My last area, Alexandria, it's like south of Bucharest. I'd been cooking my whole mission. Like we don't get fed a lot over there, so like you cook most of your own food. And so I was kind of exhausted cooking my own food, and we had been switching apartments and moving and stuff mid-transfer, and so it was obnoxious to do that anyway. And so I got a shawarma about like, I'd say probably 4 times a week that transfer, which wasn't too healthy on my, but it was delicious and fantastic. There's all kinds of other street foods, but as far as traditional food goes, they eat a lot of pickled stuff. So it's been like soaked in, just pickled stuff, cabbage and veggies. If you're not used to pickled things, it takes a while to get used to, but they're actually really like the homemade pickled foods. They do a lot of vegetables. They're really health conscious, which kind of contradicts me eating all that street food, but they're really health conscious about the foods that they eat. The first traditional food you need to know about is sarmale. One is called a sarma, and what they are is you take a pickled cabbage leaf, or it could be grapevine leaf, just some kind of pickled green leaf, and you cook rice and some kind of meat together, and you put spices in it. You wrap it up, and then you can either, some people boil them in like, we call it red sauce, just some kind of tomato sauce, or you can like bake them in that. But basically they're just these little bite-sized things of delicious goodness. Like those sarmale I had on the first day were not a good representation at all of what they were. I love sarmale. We're going to be doing a Christmas party, and like the only thing everyone wants is sarmale. And so that's like one of their main entrees. They do ardei umpluți, which are like stuffed peppers, kind of the same thing, but they use bell peppers. Okay, they eat bread with everything. So if you have a bowl of soup, you eat a loaf of bread with it. If you have sarmale, you eat a bowl of bread with it. If you have a salad, you eat a thing of bread with it, If you eat a loaf of bread, you gotta have a side of bread with it. But it's good because the bread there is fantastic. You pay like 50 American cents at the most for like the most extravagant loaf of bread you'll ever have in your life. Just really good, tasty, and anyway, if you don't eat bread in Romania, you're missing out. So, but because they eat so much bread, they have things they call salate. It translates to salad, but it's not the salad we think of where you have like, yeah, we got leaves and maybe some beans or pineapple or bacon bits. Let's find the bacon bits and not really eat the lettuce. Now, salate are kind of like bread spreads almost. And there's a couple kinds. There's an eggplant one that I really enjoy. It's called salate de vinete. It's brown and it has kind of it almost has like a barbecued aspect to the flavor, but it's just a really savory flavor. My favorite was salate de boeuf, and there's a lot of question on how you actually pronounce that because it's not a Romanian word, but it has a bunch of different types of veggies, a little bit of mustard and mayo. It sounds kind of gross, like why would you put that on bread, but like fantastic. It's delicious. Yeah, and all kinds of bread spreads. They have 2 kinds of soup. One's called ciorba and the other's called supa, of course. The supas are just like you expected things, like, yeah, like a chicken noodle, or maybe like, they don't eat a lot of beef, they eat a lot of pork, so like a beef potato, or pork potato, something like that. But what you really got to try is the ciorbe. Okay, a ciorba, what makes it different from a soup is it has a thing called borscht in it. Borscht, they take wheat tares and they ferment them, non-alcoholically, mind you, in water, and so it kind of, this might sound a little bad, it kind of adds the taste of like what you might have in a beer or something, but to a soup. Don't worry, no alcohol content, like, they save the alcohol for drinking, not for eating. So, but you put that in the soup and it has like a really kind of a sour or bitter taste to it, and it just amplifies the flavor. So you'll see a lot of different types of soups. The broths are going to be a lot different than you're used to in the States, but if I had to rate them, I'd rather have a ciorba than soup from Olive Garden or anywhere else in the country here. So yeah, that's pretty much all the food. Oh, desserts. Okay, so desserts are a little bit interesting. As Americans, we're so used to like high sugar and like high fat and cream flavors, and so there's these things called confeiterie where like they have all these really fancy looking like cake bits and all kinds of desserts. All these, they look fantastic, just artistic, beautiful. And when you get it, like, there's two things you're going to notice. One, there's not the sugar you're used to, and so you're going to go, this isn't flavorful. And the second is you're going to go, this tastes like rum. I need to explain that a little bit. There's a rum flavoring that they use, senza de Roma, excuse me. But they they love adding that, and so you have to be careful because the rum essence has no alcohol in it, it's just the flavor. But sometimes they put real rum in, and so you kind of have to like be able to tell which one's which. And because they don't use like as much sodium and other preservatives that we use, of course they use alcohol as a type of preservative. And so sometimes if you buy like a really cheap packaged little bits of cake, it might smell and taste a little bit like fingernail polish to you because they use that preservative, and it doesn't make it not tasty, it just makes it something that you're not used to. It took me a while to get used to them, but after that, like, I really grew to love the pastries and the cakes, and oh my gosh, the gogosh. I already talked about those, the little fried breads. So that's pretty much the majority of what you're going to find food-wise. Oh, drinks. They have a thing called nectar. So they call any, like, basically any drink that's not water, they call souk, unless it has, like, alcohol in it. And so there's all kinds of juices. We think of juice like, okay, Welch's, you know, it's got this % juice content and then this. No, they have like really exotic ways of making souk. There's like carbonated orange juices and carbonated carrot juices I've seen a couple times. But my favorite type of souk, it's called nectar. And it's, the first time I had it was at the mission president's house when we had that breakfast. And we had a peach nectar. And, you know, you hear the word nectar and you think instantly like the Testament, like the nectar of the gods. And like I drank that and I was like, this is what that is. And it's just, it's a lot thicker. So it's like super rich. The flavor's potent. You take a drink of it and it's like taking a bite into the freshest, most ripe form of the fruit that you've ever come across. And every single glass is like that. It's just fantastic. It's got a ton of sugar in it. As far as I know, we had a missionary that developed diabetes, and most of us assume it was because of his diet. He consumed a huge amount of souk and ate like all kinds of street foods and stuff like that. And to boot, he didn't like really exercise, but there's that potential. But it's all delicious food, you know, all things in moderation. One food you do need to know about, okay, and it's interesting. You're going to hear a lot of conflicted opinions about it. It's called piftie. There's a couple different names for it throughout the country. So let me describe it real quick. So for Christmas, they have big meals, right? They say am tăiat un porc. They butchered a pig, or they had, they bought a pig and got a bunch of meat. And they do kind of a feast. They have tons of courses and things like that. Piftie is where they take the fat and the leftover parts from that pig, and they make like a gelatin mix. And so your piftie is going to have like bits of skin or ear or nose or who knows what in it. And then it's in this like almost like a grayish jello looking thing, but a little bit more consistent. And so of course you hear that and you go, that sounds horrible. And I only had it once, and I didn't know until after the fact that it was actually piftie, and it was a turkey piftie. So you know how when you get gravy after your Thanksgiving and you put it in the fridge, it kind of like congeals and it's really thick and stuff. So it was a lot like that, and then turkey bits were baked with it, and so like there were slices of that. And when it was served cold, of course, but when I ate it, it was actually incredibly tasty. It had a good balance of like garlic and spices in it. The day before, the other missionaries had been fed some, and they said it wasn't too great. But we went to the same member's house the next day, and we had the same stuff, and it was phenomenal. So as far as piftie goes, I think it's kind of, you got to toss a coin and see if it's going to be incredibly good or not so much. It depends on how much you've kind of adapted to the food.